Welcome into Sportsmemo's betting podcast for February 18th, Monday, with Robbie Vino. Rob, welcome into the podcast. How are you?
I am good today, Drew. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. We're talking college basketball on today's show. We're also going to talk some AAF, the new football league, when we're done with a couple games on the college basketball slate. So, Robbie, I know you've been interested in that new football league, so we'll get to that about halfway through the podcast, but do want to bang out a couple big games in college basketball. We got 8-5-1, 8-5-2, Virginia at Virginia Tech. It's Virginia laying 5 on the road in this one, Robbie, up to 120 now as the total. The total did get bounced down and then back up a little bit. Virginia opened 3.5 favorites in Blacksburg, now up to 5. So some big Virginia money here. They both make free throws, Robbie, so you can see why at the end, if it's a foul fest and Virginia's up, which the market is kind of telling us they should be, it makes sense that they're taking money here. Both teams aren't going to really hurry up the pace here, Robbie. Two slow teams. Virginia, you could argue they're the slowest team in the country. Also, they got Kyle Guy and company really putting the ball in the basket this year. I've really looked to bet Virginia this year. Pretty much a one-way team for me to this point. And, they're 22-0 versus all teams in the country not named Duke, Robbie. So for me, it's Virginia or pass. How do you see it?
Well, there's no question, Drew. I mean, if you were just going to rate teams like we do with power ratings, Virginia's a top 5 team in the nation. There's no question about it. We've talked before about how that Duke matchup has been kind of difficult for them, and we'll see if they get a chance to meet up again with the Blue Devils in the ACC tournament. We'll see if they can solve the problems. But, stylistically, as common as Duke and North Carolina are, Virginia's had trouble with Duke, but they had no trouble with North Carolina. So it's an interesting matchup there. It's the only thing, like you say, that stopped them from winning games every game this season. Here, to me, the thing that sticks out like a sore thumb, Drew, is the matchup fundamentally on the floor. Virginia Tech so predicated on their three-point marksmanship. Number 4 in the country, shooting almost 42% as a team from 3. They've got multiple guys who can shoot it. Yet UVA, number 2 in the nation in three-point defense. So you got one of your best three-point shooting teams against one of your best perimeter defenses. And the first time it didn't go so well for Virginia Tech, 81-59 UVA blowout from three-point land. Virginia Tech shot 7 of 21 in that game. Let's remember, too, that in that contest, Virginia Tech had their point guard, Justin Robinson, in the starting lineup. He's now missed 5 straight games. Virginia Tech 2-3 against the spread without him, 3-2 over the total with him. Some of that, obviously points toward where the totals are set, but still 3-2. Virginia Tech was a much higher scoring team before Robinson got hurt. So it's had an effect on this team, and it'll probably have an effect on them tonight. I could only play this game Virginia or not at all. This game actually got higher than 5 points. I think I saw them as high as 6, either early this morning or overnight last night. Come back a little bit. But like I say, in that first matchup with Robinson on the floor, it was just a complete demolishment. I get that it was in Charlottesville, but just as I said earlier about Virginia having a tough time with the Duke matchup, to me this just seems like a real difficult matchup for Virginia Tech. They're not necessarily a team that's going to get a bunch of points inside. So to me, Virginia has the advantage there. Defense, as a rule, generally speaking, it travels. Virginia's defense travels anywhere. So if for me, I'd have to lay the number or not play at all. I know Virginia Tech, they're not in a desperate situation because they're so good in net rankings, but I know that Buzz Williams would like them to get on a winning track. They win 70-64 Saturday over Pitt in I think was a push. And UVA had a difficult time in a non-cover Saturday, even though they won. But like I said before, for me, it would be Virginia or no play at all here.
Good stuff, Robbie. And guys, if you're listening to the podcast, you're at or near the site, and it's $9 Monday. Robbie's got a play up. I got a play up. Teddy's got a play up. A bunch of plays up on the board, and all of the plays at sportsmemo.com are discounted to just $9 today, so check it out. Good stuff at the site. We got Illinois, Wisconsin in the Big Ten, Robbie. 853, 854 on the rotation slate. 8 p.m. Eastern tip. This one on FS1, so nationally televised game here, Robbie. 134 the total. Seeing 9.5, that's Wisconsin laying at home. I'll tell you this, Robbie. Wisconsin, they lost 2 in a row to Michigan State. And but besides that, they've been really good. One thing I will say, though, and it's a slow-tempo team for the most part, Ethan Happ, from the free throw line, it's a joke. I mean, he's one of the best players in the country, really, but he's under 50% from the free throw line. I think, especially in competitive games towards the end, it's just like, he becomes under a point per possession if the opposing team's going to foul him. It's kind of like Shaq back in the day when he struggled from the line. It's even worse, I think, from just a percentage standpoint. And Illinois coming in 4 wins in a row. But when you really break it down, besides Michigan State, there's not really many wins of substance. And Michigan State, when they beat them, was in a little bit of a downturn, and they kind of caught them at the right time. So I'm not sure how much I put into the Illini winning a few games in a row here. I will tell you this, though. Illinois, Wisconsin, slow pace. I think Wisconsin's the better team playing at home. I don't know if this one gets to the mid-30s. What's your thoughts here on Illinois, Wisconsin?
Yeah, first time around, Drew, it got to 132. Wisconsin goes to Champaign. They win 72-60 in that contest. Ethan Happ, surprisingly, was 3 for 4 from the free throw line. Magnificent free throw shooting by Happ. But everything you said about him, and it's going to stop him, in all likelihood, from being Big Ten Player of the Year. I think Carson Edwards of Purdue will probably get that award because Ethan Happ just becomes, like you say, such a liability. And once it gets between the ears the way it is now with him, it's difficult to snap out of. And I would not be surprised if, as we head towards the end of regular season and into conference tournament season where games gain importance, I wouldn't be surprised at all if, again, what you said earlier, it becomes a hack-a-hap type of situation for teams in close games, because he's going to have to learn how to make them, or else Wisconsin's going to lose games close because of his inability to do so. But I agree with a lot of what you said. Illinois, Brad Underwood, give him credit. He's brought this team. They progressed, certainly progressed up my power ratings. They were at the bottom of the barrel in the Big Ten for much of the year. They now sit, I think, 3rd or 4th from the bottom in power ratings. So he's got them up and out of the complete cellar. They play hard, but they're a scattered shooting team. You just can't trust these guys. When you see teams whose field goal percentage allowed is, much greater than what their field goal percentage offensively is, it's a troubling factor. A lot of teams are sub in that category, but for Illinois, they're minus 3%. Field goal shooting and field goal shooting allowed percentage-wise, where Wisconsin is plus a full 7%. Shoot 46-7 from the floor, only allow 39-7. The gap there is significant, in my opinion. I don't understand the move toward Illinois in this game, except for the fact, I shouldn't say I don't understand it, because there's certain reasons why you would play Illinois in this game. First off, being a double-digit dog in a game that's, expected to be relatively low scoring, you would want double-digit points in that instance. So the move from 11 to 9.5, just from a straight handicapping perspective, understandable. The total's gone down, like you say, to 133.5 from an opener of 134. But still, I think the fundamentals override any general handicapping theory here. Wisconsin, a really, really good three-point shooting team. If guys like Davison get hot, look out. I think they might be the best three-point shooting team in that conference percentage-wise. So, again, I kind of lean towards the Wisconsin side here. Not going to play the game. I don't think I can get involved either way. But total could be something to look at. Like I say, the first time it only reached 132. And in that game, just so listeners know, in that game, Wisconsin shot 51% from the field. and the game only got to 132. So that could be a telling sign right there.
Yeah, that's a good point, because they're likely they could get there, but it still stayed under shooting good. So good point there, Robbie. Guys, remember $9 Monday on sportsmemo.com. Got a couple hours here till tip-off. Kansas State, West Virginia. Let's hit this one real quick. Robbie, 6.5. Kansas State laying on the road, 131 the total. Kansas State, tough loss last game at Iowa State. But breaking that down, they only shot 26% from three. They're usually a little bit better than that, so that's something to keep in mind. Also, Dean Wade left kind of limping off the court there. And this is a game I actually bet Kansas State at the opener and has since come back and bought off of it. So I'm off the game, just lost juice on the transaction. And really the reason was I came across the information that Dean Wade might not play, and I don't want any money riding on the game if he's not playing. And West Virginia, for me, Robbie, is a team. It's a one-way team for me. I'm fading them or nothing. Their half-court offense is just awful. They've lost 3 in a row, 6 of their last 7, 11 of their last 13. This year, West Virginia, the Mountaineers just aren't for me. So, long way of saying I'm not on this game anymore. But how would you look to bet it, Robbie?
Well, it is interesting, Drew, because Dean Wade's injury will get all the publicity. He's probably not going to play tonight. It's a recurring foot injury. According to Bruce Weber, it's not the same exact spot as the injury which kept him out of the lineup earlier this season. But I think they'll be precautionary with him here. He was in a walking boot after the game. It doesn't sound like he's going to go. So he's out, and like I say, that'll gain all the attention, rightfully so. I mean, Dean Wade is number 1 on Kansas State in three-point percentage at 6'10", shoots 41% from 3. He's number 1 in free throw percentage, unlike what we just talked about with Ethan Happ. Here's a big guy who shoots 81% from the line, and he's number 2 in field goal percentage, shooting 50.5%. So 1, 1, and 2 in all 3 categories of shooting rankings. It's tough to lose. Beyond that, they lose their 6th man here, probably till conference tournament time. Cartier Diarra did not play in the last 2 games, won't play here, so they're severely shorthanded, Kansas State is. All that being said, the reason why this game didn't go from the 7 opener all the way down to 5 or 4.5 is because West Virginia is even worse off personnel-wise. Last Monday, of course, Bob Huggins suspends Issa Ahmad, who is a huge part of that team. Ahmad's a 3rd leading scorer, 12 per game, 3rd leading rebounder, 6 per game. If you look at the first game these two played, K-State wins that game 71-69. They escape at home. It was one of those games early on this season, back on January 9th, where Wade was not available, so he wasn't in the lineup. They wind up winning 71-69. Most important thing to take from that, aside from Wade not playing, is the fact that 3 of West Virginia's starters in that contest aren't in the lineup anymore. Like I say, Ahmad got suspended, Wesley Harris suspended, James Bolden's been out for a while, and according to all reports, he won't play here tonight. Again, he's the number 2 scorer on the team. So they only have 2/5 of that starting lineup back. It's a team that only has 9 healthy scholarship players to begin with, or at least at this point right now. You might look a little bit toward a West Virginia revenge theory under normal circumstances. K-State was down 21 points in the second half in that game on January 9th, and West Virginia blew the game and lose 71-69, so 21-point deficit overcome in the second half. You would think West Virginia at home would remember it, but I don't know. There's so many pieces missing here, Drew. It makes for a difficult game handicap. Total's gone down from 32.5 to 31.5. It could be the way to go here just because the offense is – first of all, when teams are shorthanded, coaches tend to go to longer possessions. Not that that's a problem for K-State. They like longer possessions. If you shorten the game with a shortened lineup, it usually benefits you. And West Virginia, of course, doesn't force the turnovers like they used to. Poor free throw shooting team as well. For me, maybe a look at the under in that game.
Good stuff, Robbie. Guys, $9 Monday at sportsmemo.com. Check it out. We got TCU, Oklahoma State up next, and we're going to talk a little AAF AAF, the new football league, to end the podcast. So last college basketball game here, Robbie. TCU laying 3 on the road. Oklahoma State lost 5 straight, Robbie. Lost 8 of their last 9. TCU's banged up as well. 5 players now not on the team that were on their opening day roster. So just a lot of kind of mixing parts here with this game. I'm not involved. How do you look to bet TCU Oklahoma State?
Yeah, it's almost a repeat of what we just said for the K-State West Virginia game, Drew. It's a battle of injuries here for both of these squads. Oklahoma State has played in a season here with 7 scholarship players. They continue to play hard for Mike Boynton. That's a huge credit to him, but they just don't have the personnel. It's a game where the first time around we had huge runs and a game-winning shot by the favorite to win the game, TCU. So just like West Virginia being at home tonight with somewhat of a revenge angle, Oklahoma State, the underdog, is at home tonight with, again, somewhat of a revenge angle. They lose with a game-winning shot with 0.3 left on the clock. But a couple of things are important here for the TCU side. We talked a little bit about net ratings or net rankings last week, which is what the NCAA is going to use now in the selection committee room to pick the 68-team field. TCU sits at number 41 right now as we speak. According to published reports, Jamie Dixon is treating this as a must-win game for TCU. Told his team, we have to go get Monday's game. We have to play well on Monday. So you can expect an intensely focused effort out of TCU, which, again, shorthanded. Kouat is a very underrated player, not talked about much for this TCU squad, but the ankle injury that he suffered and kept him out of last game, probably going to keep him out of this game as well. He, too, like Dean Wade, was in a walking boot after the game. It makes this TCU bench so much shorter. Once again, we're repeating a lot of the stuff from the K-State West Virginia analysis, but it just seems to work out the same way. Boynton's team, if I had more faith in him, and if it wasn't such a must situation for TCU, I'd probably grab 3 and play the home underdog. Total's gone down from 141.5 to 139.5. Again, understandable. 2 teams with probably rotations of 7 that are going to likely play a slower-paced game here. If every shot goes down, you probably lose your under bet. But the way Oklahoma State has shot this season, these teams got to 138 the first time around. 70-68 was the final score there, so that stays under 139.5. Again, Kouat was part of that game, scored 12 points. For me, a lot of the same things that stand true for the K-State West Virginia, in my opinion, in that game, stand true in this game. Probably have to look toward it can't find a side here. Maybe you look toward the under.
Robbie, we got the AAF going now, and I do remember Arizona was favored by 13. The money pushed it to 16. I believe they've lost. Is that right, Robbie?
They won the game by 2 points.
Oh, okay.
They don't cover.
They didn't cover. Were they down big early?
They were. They wind up scoring all 20 points in the second half, and I think they come from being shut out. I think it was like 18 to. It might have been 18 to nothing, 18 to 3, something like that, and they came from behind to win the game with, like I say, 20 second half points. So Memphis, a team that had been really shredded on opening day by Birmingham, and a team that drew no support from the betting markets, and covered that game rather easily. Power ratings, Drew, just to get into that real quick, when we go back to what I had for last week's power ratings, showed Arizona should only have been a 6.5 point favorite, not a 16 point favorite. So they were correct. The power ratings were correct in that situation. It goes to show you the difference that can be made from week 1 to week 2, from playing on a visiting field to getting to your home field for your home opener. We have a couple instances of that this week. But yeah, Arizona, probably your second best team in the league. Some people think they're the best team in the league. Obviously, they were the team that was listed by bookmakers as the favorite to win the first ever championship of this league. So good team, got behind early. again, not a huge fan of the Mike Aliotti defense, and Memphis, who couldn't do a thing against Birmingham, did a little bit against Arizona, despite, again, what was just horrendous play out of Christian Hackenberg at quarterback.
Yeah, that's becoming a running joke in the league. And guys, if you're not following Rob Vino on Twitter, you should. At Rob Vino Sports, he just put out his power ratings for Week 3 in the AAF. This is before even there's a full marketplace of places to bet. Heck, Robbie, it's kind of tough to find the odds. We don't have them on the Sportsmemo odds screen, so I don't even know. Does Bet Online even have them up yet?
They do, and that's the way you have to find them, Drew. You have accounts at these places. If you have accounts at Bookmaker or Five Dimes or Greek or Bet Online, that's really where you have to go to find them and see the movement on these games. Otherwise, like you say, generally speaking, I don't see a line service out there yet that's providing numbers, live numbers on these games as they go along throughout the week. Hopefully it'll get to that, because I think the popularity of this league will grow. But we'll see how that goes. Otherwise, like I say, if you have an account at a decent offshore, you're going to be able to get the numbers.
Robbie, and we got like 5 minutes left here. Is there anything you want to throw out to the listeners as far as like what you saw Week 2, anything to look for Week 3, and also putting up plays at sportsmemo.com for Week 3?
Yeah, and for those listening, I did put up some plays this past weekend. We went 2-1 on the 3 games that we played. For this weekend, Drew, just a real quick oversight of what's going to happen here. You get 2 rematches within 3 weeks. Arizona and Salt Lake City played in Week 1. Arizona won that game. And San Antonio, San Diego played in Week 1. San Antonio won that game. They're just going to switch home fields and play it again 2 weeks later. We'll see how it goes there. That's what happens, I guess, when you only have 8 teams in your league. And a couple of teams, Salt Lake City and the Atlanta Legends, will play their very first home games of the season. For Atlanta, they're going to be home in Georgia State Stadium, and for Salt Lake, they'll be home at Rice-Eccles Stadium. If you recognize the names, you know that those are college university stadiums, home stadiums, where those games will be played. So different angles, Drew, I'm just trying to throw out there that to come at these games with home and away seem to make a little bit of difference. Last week, teams that got their first home games, San Diego was one. They win and cover. Interesting note, San Diego did not score a touchdown the first 111 minutes of the season, and they scored 2 touchdowns in a 5-minute span of the fourth quarter in order to put themselves in position for that late cover against Atlanta yesterday. So, like I say, pretty good league so far, Drew. Maybe we can get more in depth later on in the week as far as these games are concerned. But I've watched it all the way through, and I can honestly say I think the league, if they stick to the game plan here, will probably be a success. They've already had calls from NFL teams on certain players to maybe get a shot in NFL camps. So what they set out to do through 2 weeks is progressing that way.
Yeah, right. I agree with you. I mean, it's a sport I wish I could go back in time and spend more time and try to really beat it from a betting angle. I'm going to tell your plays this upcoming week, but it's just one of those things that's beatable from a betting standpoint. And the games that I have watched, it's interesting. It's fun. It's working, so to speak, as far as this has staying power and can turn into a makeshift minor league for the NFL. I mean, right. Is that what you think it's going towards?
I definitely do, Drew. I think it could be a feeding area for NFL teams, much like AAA, AA baseball is to Major League Baseball teams, much like the G League is to the NBA. I think it's a great idea. You recognize so many names. I know you and I had a couple laughs about it last week when I was rattling off some names, but if you sit down and watch these games, you remember exactly where this kid played in college and how good the kid was in college. So it's not a league void of talent, for sure. Just guys who didn't get their spot on an NFL roster either due to injury, either due to the numbers game that happens when you only have a 53-man roster, whatever the case may be. But, boy, I tell you, the league is competitive, and as they go along here, I think it'll get better and better and better.
Are there any other names you ran across this past weekend that might put a smile on some of the listeners' faces?
You know what? Oh, goodness. You're going to make me think here now.
Logan Woodside is one for me.
Yeah, Logan Woodside played very well. They scored 29 points in that game last week against Orlando. Orlando came from behind with a big comeback. Steve Spurrier throwing the ball all over the lot again, Drew, much like he did throughout his coaching career, and they come back with a big 37-29 win. I think the Birmingham Iron, Quentin Patton, I think we talked about, receiver for the 49ers last year, has really come up big for Birmingham so far this year. Josh Huff, a speedster out of Oregon who had time with the Philadelphia Eagles, playing well for Arizona right now. And the skill position players, Greg Ward Jr., we remember him as Houston, right?
Yeah.
He's the wide receiver on San Antonio. So there's a lot of guys out there. Jalen Marshall, for those who remember the Ohio State team of a couple of years ago when Michael Thomas and all those receivers played on that team, Jalen Marshall playing for Steve Spurrier's Orlando team right now. Just a host of guys out there that if you sit down and watch the game, you're going to recognize these guys. I'll say this. Philip Nelson, the backup quarterback for San Diego, he's been named the starter now, played very, very well this weekend. And there were a lot of good ground games. Drew, maybe Akeem Hunt, you might remember him from Purdue.
Yeah.
Real good running back there. And, like I say, the skill position people, for those casual college football watchers, you'd probably know. For us, we definitely know these guys.
Yeah, how the heck is Greg Ward Jr. not in the NFL, Robbie?
Yeah, and he was just on an Eagles roster as recently as this past season. So, there were a couple of Eagles that I noticed on the field there this week. LaDainian Washington, a receiver from that great 2013 Missouri team that had Michael Sam, the team that won the Cotton Bowl that year.
Yeah, the SEC East champions.
Right.
And then Auburn beat them in the SEC championship. That was a great team by Missouri.
Yeah, and that was a great game, as a matter of fact. If we want to sit here and go down memory lane, I remember that game was back and forth, and Auburn took over in the fourth quarter. But LaDainian Washington in there making big plays. So a lot of really productive college players. And like I say, Drew, for whatever reason, just, didn't make the NFL roster. But I think we'll see these guys. And maybe in the future the NFL expands because maybe there becomes enough good players to make one more team or make two more teams. We'll see.
Yeah, good stuff, Robbie, as always. Guys, follow Robbie on Twitter at RobVinoSports for those power ratings, and we'll have Robbie back on Friday for sure, talking college basketball in the AAF and likely before, so stay tuned. Thanks for tuning in. Best of luck with your bets. We'll talk to you tomorrow.